When we think of the Russian Empire, we often imagine vast expanses of snow, towering palaces, grand imperial architecture, and battles that changed the course of history. But the rise of Russia as an empire was anything but inevitable. From the humble beginnings of a collection of Slavic tribes to the coronation of one of the most powerful empires in history, the Russian Empire would become a dominant force on the global stage. This is the story of how Russia rose, transformed, and ultimately shaped the modern world. Our journey begins not in the halls of palaces or with emperors, but with the Slavic tribes scattered across the vast plains of Eastern Europe. These tribes formed the foundation of what would eventually become the Kievan Rus, a medieval state that served as the precursor to Russia. The Kievan Rus emerged in the 9th century, initially ruled by Norse settlers called Varangians. Their first major ruler, Rurik, founded the dynasty that would lead the region for centuries. By the late 10th century, the Rus were a burgeoning power, with the city of Kiev at its heart. In 957, Princess Olga of Kiev became one of the first notable figures in Kievan Rus to embrace Christianity. But it was her grandson, Prince Vladimir, who made a profound change in the region's identity. In 988, Vladimir converted to Christianity, adopting the Byzantine Rite, and declared it the state religion. This decision didn't just change the spiritual landscape, it set the foundation for a strong political and cultural relationship between Russia and the Eastern Roman Empire. Christianity laid the groundwork for the cultural and intellectual transformation of the region. The Kievan Rus became a bridge between the Christian East and the pagan North, bringing a wealth of art, culture, and ideas from the Byzantine Empire. However, just as the Kievan Rus began to thrive, disaster struck. In the 13th century, the Mongol invasion devastated the region. The Mongols, led by Batu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, stormed across Eastern Europe and eventually captured Kiev in 1240. For the next 2 centuries, the region would be dominated by the Golden Horde, a Mongol Khanate that ruled over the Russian principalities. The Kievan Rus dissolved, and the Russian people were forced into subjugation. But even in the face of Mongol rule, something else began to take shape. Amid the Mongol yoke, a city began to rise in prominence, Moscow. In the 14th century, Prince Ivan I of Moscow, known as Ivan Khalida, began to consolidate power by playing the Mongols and other rival princes against each other. Over time, Moscow grew in influence, eventually becoming the center of Russian power. But it wasn't until Ivan III, or Ivan the Great, that Moscow would break free from Mongol domination. In 1480, Ivan stood up to the Mongols, rejecting their rule and claiming Moscow's independence. This marked the beginning of the rise of Russia as a unified and independent entity. By the end of Ivan III's reign in 1505, Moscow had not only thrown off Mongol control but had also positioned itself as the center of the Russian Orthodox Church, a position that would define the Russian state for centuries. This is when Russia began to emerge as an empire, ready to expand and assert itself. The next pivotal figure in Russian history was Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible. Ascending to the throne in 1547, Ivan IV was crowned the first Tsar of Russia, a title that would later become synonymous with imperial power. Under Ivan's rule, Russia took a darker turn. Ivan was a brilliant strategist and conqueror. He expanded Russia's borders significantly by conquering Kazan, Astrakhan, and the Siberian Khanate, extending Russian influence far to the east. But his reign was also marked by ruthless tactics. He established the Oprichnina, a secret police force that brutally suppressed any opposition to his rule. Ivan's later years saw him become increasingly paranoid and violent. The tragic death of his beloved wife, Anastasia Romanovna, led to a mental breakdown, and he lashed out at his own people, even killing his own son in a fit of rage. Ivan's reign set the tone for a future of ruthless autocracy and expansionism. Despite his erratic rule, Ivan the Terrible's military campaigns laid the groundwork for the Russian Empire's massive territorial expansion and established the concept of a centralized, autocratic state. After Ivan's death, Russia plunged into the time of troubles, a period marked by civil war, famine, and foreign invasions. For a time, it seemed that the Russian state might collapse altogether. But in 1613, a new dynasty emerged, the Romanovs. Michael Romanov, a distant relative of Ivan the Terrible, was chosen as the new Tsar. His coronation marked the beginning of the Romanov dynasty, which would rule Russia for over 300 years. Under the Romanovs, Russia stabilized and began a period of territorial expansion, military modernization, and centralization of power. By the late 17th century, Russia was poised for an extraordinary transformation, and it came in the form of Peter I, or Peter the Great. Ascending to the throne in 1682, Peter set out to modernize Russia, and in doing so, he would change the face of the nation forever. Peter the Great understood that to be a powerful empire, Russia needed to be on equal footing with the great powers of Europe. To do this, he sought to westernize Russian society, adopting European styles of government, military organization, and even fashion. He built a modern navy, reformed the military, and established new educational institutions. In 1703, he founded St. Petersburg, a new capital on the Baltic Sea, symbolizing Russia's new European identity. But Peter's ambitions weren't limited to reforms. He engaged in a series of wars with Sweden, Poland, and the Ottoman Empire, gradually expanding Russian territory and securing Russia's place as a European power. Peter the Great's legacy was built upon by his successors, most notably Catherine the Great, one of Russia's most celebrated rulers. Ascending to the throne in 1762 after the coup that ousted her husband, Peter III, Catherine was a philosopher queen, known for her keen intellect and commitment to the arts, education, and expansion. Catherine pursued territorial expansion, gaining large parts of Poland, the Black Sea, and the Crimea, effectively turning Russia into a great European power. Her reign saw Russia become a dominant force in European politics, and she was beloved by the Russian elite. Under her rule, Russia experienced a golden age of culture, intellectual growth, and enlightened reforms, even though some of her decisions also led to harsher treatment of the serfs. The 19th century was a time of major upheaval and expansion for the Russian Empire. Russia played a central role in the defeat of Napoleon during the Napoleonic Wars and solidified its influence in Europe. Under Tsars like Alexander I and Nicholas I, Russia's power reached its zenith. However, as the empire expanded, internal tensions grew, particularly among the serfs and emerging intellectuals. The winds of change were blowing, and the old system of rule was facing pressure from within. By the early 20th century, the Russian Empire was crumbling. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and the Russian Empire. Tsar Nicholas II, the last of the Romanovs, was overthrown, and Russia would never be the same again. The legacy of the Russian Empire, however, lives on. Through its conquests, reforms, and cultural achievements, the empire shaped the world's geopolitical landscape, leaving a lasting impact on Russia's modern identity. From the rise of the Kievan Rus to the downfall of the Romanovs, the Russian Empire was a force of history, one that carved its name into the annals of the world. Though it no longer exists in its imperial form, its legacy remains part of Russia's DNA, influencing the course of global history to this very day. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the history that shaped our world.